Mr. President, I'm almost embarrassed to talk about what I'm going to have to talk about today. We find ourselves in the United States Congress once again only days away from causing a lapse in the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, the majority of members of the United States Senate, of the United States House of Representatives, understand the importance of extending this program, but sadly, some don't. You can lead some people to water, but you can't make them think. Without congressional action, ordinary Americans, the people who get up every day and go to work and obey the law and pay their taxes and try to do the right things by their kids, are going to suffer. These folks work pretty hard to earn money to cover their mortgages, to pay their insurance premiums, to put food on the table, and hopefully have a little extra when all is said and done. The United States government made a promise to these people, Mr. President, these tax-paying Americans, that if they pay their flood insurance premiums, then we'll have their backs when they flood. Well, Mr. President, we're about to tell them we lied. You know, when you lie to Congress, it's a felony. When Congress lies to you, it's just politics. And that's not right. Unless we do something, Mr. President, the National Flood Insurance Program, we call it, as you know, the NFIP, is going to expire on July the 31st. Now, unless you're a rock, only dumber, that's in 8 days, including today. Every once in a while, Congress seems to just decide that keeping our promise to the American taxpayer isn't worth the effort. What planet did we parachute in from that we can't even maintain the status quo on something that affects the lives of millions of people and helps more than 22,000 communities across this great country? Mr. President, I'm standing here today because the reauthorization of the NFIP has never been more urgent. Let me say it again. We have 8 days until disaster. If the NFIP is allowed to expire on July 31, Congress is going to be sending a clear message to the 5 million hardworking Americans who count on this program. And that message is 3 words: we don't care. We don't care. And the unfortunate thing is that I think some, it's a small minority, but some don't. Last September, when Texas and parts of Louisiana were still reeling from Hurricane Harvey, one member of the United States Congress actually said, and I quote, "The federal government is encouraging and subsidizing people to live in harm's way. At some point," he said, "God is telling you to move. Give me a break." Are you kidding me? The fact is that 50% of our country's population and 50% of our country's jobs are along our coasts and waterways. You really think they ought to just move? Living near water is an economic necessity. People have been doing it since the beginning of time. It's as true for us now as it was in biblical times, that our economies and our livelihoods are tied to water. You take the Mississippi River, which runs through my state. Each year, it sustains 1.3 million jobs and generates more than $405 billion in revenue. How many jobs are tied to the 12,000 miles of U.S. coastline? What do you think would be the economic impact if everyone who lived near one of the 3.5 million miles of rivers in this great country just picked up and moved tomorrow as if they could afford to do so? Give me a break. I hope we never have to find out what would happen, Mr. President. But one thing is certain. Nobody's going to move before July 31 when the NFIP expires just because some members of Congress erroneously think they ought to. I want to make two other points, Mr. President. First, if Congress allows the NFIP to expire, it's going to stall thousands and thousands and thousands of home closings. That's right. Many lenders, because the law requires it, many lenders require homeowners to carry flood insurance. No NFIP, no flood insurance. No flood insurance, no home sale. The last time Congress chose to do nothing and let the National Flood Insurance Program expire, Mr. President, the NFIP lapsed for a total of 53 days. That was in 2010. Over those 2 months, each and every day, 1,400 home sales were canceled. That's every day. That's not total, that's every day. Think about that, how that's going to impact our economy. Isn't that special? Just when we finally get the United States economy moving again, we're going to step on it by letting the National Flood Insurance Program expire. No wonder many Americans say, and I hear it all the time, yes, there are some good members of Congress. We just can't figure out what they're good for. Mr. President, I'm also tired of hearing that the NFIP is being abused by rich people for their beach homes. I hear it all the time. That's a bunch of bovine waste, Mr. President. 98.5%, almost 99% of all NFIP policies are in counties with a median household income of less than $100,000. 62% are in counties with a median household income below the national average of $54,000. The reality is that for those who live in a coastal state like Louisiana or otherwise in a floodplain, you don't have to live near a body of water if you get 22 inches of rain in 2 days. You're going to flood even if you live on Pikes Peak. But the reality is, for those who live in a coastal state like my state or elsewhere in a floodplain, the NFIP is the only place you can turn to protect your property. Floods are the most common and the most costly natural disaster. And the damage that's done by hail and fire and wind or a falling tree is covered by homeowners insurance, but not if you flood. If you flood, it's not covered by your homeowner's policy. Mr. President, the federal government made a promise. We promised more than 5 million Americans, 500,000 in my state alone, that we would have their backs. We promised them that if they would pay their hard-earned money into the National Flood Insurance Program through premiums, if they flooded, we would cover them. It's time we get our act together and keep that promise, Mr. President. The NFIP is just too important to be used as a political football. For millions of people in this country, in my state and elsewhere, this program is the only way they can protect their most valuable asset, their home. And at a minimum, we owe those hardworking Americans some peace of mind. So I urge my colleagues, Mr. President, to support my bill and the bill of Senator Bill Cassidy, the senior senator from Louisiana, Senate Bill 3128. It'll extend the flood insurance program for 6 months through hurricane season. That's all it does. It just maintains the status quo. It doesn't change anything. It just says the National Flood Insurance Program that we have today is going to be extended for 6 months to get us through hurricane season, while we in the Senate and in the House continue to work on a reform bill that would rework the NFIP and turn it into a program that looks like somebody designed it on purpose. That's all my bill and Bill's bill does. We simply can't afford to let the folks in our at-risk communities down, especially those exposed during hurricane season. And truthfully, they deserve better from us, Mr. President. Mr. President, from